This is Kevin Conroy, the voice of Batman.
This is Lauren Lester, the voice of Robin and Nightwing.
And you're listening to the DCAU Review.
Hosted by Cal and Liam.
Streaming at DCAUreview.com.
And on your favorite podcast app.
Gotham City is out of control.
An entire city screaming in fear.
Supervillains walk the streets, preying on the innocent.
They will learn the true nature of power.
The police are powerless. A creature prowls this urban wasteland.
What is that?
He moves in darkness. For some, he is a rumor, a name whispered in the corridors of the underworld, waiting for the chance to strike. Let every criminal know the acid taste of fear.
You crazy! Bat! Giant bat!
Gotham has forgotten what justice means. The Dark Knight is here to remind them. Who are you? Batman. Good guys wear black.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 231 of the DCAU Review. I am one of your hosts, Cal. With me, my good friend and good brother, Liam. Liam, we are continuing here in the month of October, looking back in celebration of the 30th anniversary of Batman, the animated series. Taking a look back at some of those early episodes that we covered on the early days of the podcast here, kind of before we found our flow and voice. And we have another exciting one to look at today, a legendary episode. And not only that, we are joined by an incredible special guest correspondent again this week.
That's right, Cal. We didn't necessarily start planning this to be Watchtower Database month on the show, but thankfully, all three of the main folks on that channel were nice enough and generous enough to join us. We had James and Ted already, and thankfully joining us this week is Mattie Pahl, the third head of that three-headed monster over at the Watchtower Database, joining us to review an absolute classic in Beware the Gray Ghost. Mattie, thank you so much for joining us.
First take, first try.
That's right. This
Perfect. No notes.
No, but I what I was saying the first time, I assume we're gonna have, week 4 of this month be hosted by Data James or Kurt or maybe even Dr. Manhattan, right?
Dr. Manhattan did get a name check last week. So yes, and if you know that, if you're listening to this, you're probably a avid Watchtower Database lover as we are. And of course, Watchtower Database just wrapped up one of their storylines, an incredible Harley Quinn and Batman Willet canon. And man, this month, Watchtower Database is continuing with Zeta Month for all of the Zeta fans, all 10 to 12 of them. We know how many there are because they list all of them, all 12 of them listen to the podcast, and we see how many people listen to it. So, but today we are here with Mattie, as Liam mentioned, to break down a classic, a legendary episode, Beware the Gray Ghost, which, of course, even I think your layman Batman the Animated Series fan knows this episode, can spout off lines from it, just for a multitude of reasons, as we'll get into today. But we will look back, Liam and I will look back at the scores that we originally gave this originally on episode 25 of the podcast. So we're on episode 231 this week. So it's a little bit ago.
A little bit.
Yeah. So we'll see whether or not, do we agree with ourselves? Are we holding fast to those? We can't revise our scores, but do we agree or disagree with ourselves? Mattie will have scores themselves. So yeah, it's gonna be great. Yours are gonna be the only ones that really count this week, Mattie. So make them count. All right.
No pressure.
No pressure.
Yeah, I do love counting. That is part of that is part of the job over at Watchtower.
So before we get into the actual plot, as we'll discuss the episode itself, we will get into what we've dubbed James's favorite part of the episode, which is the official Imdb synopsis. Yes, it is crowdsourced, thus making it not official, but to us, it is official because it is on the Internet Movie Database. So therefore, we're going to get the official Imdb synopsis, which of course is brought to you by The Pod Tower. Head over to youtube.com/The Pod Tower to check out our entire catalog of episodes. Check out out episode 25 if you want to hear our original thoughts on this episode. And tremendous content, of course, from Watchtower Database. Mattie has stuff up on there, so check that out as well. Liam, I'll throw it over to you for the official IMDb synopsis.
That's right. So this is the synopsis for Beware the Grey Ghost, which was written by Dennis O'Flaherty, what a wonderful name, and Tom Ruger, with teleplay by Mr. Ruger and Garen Wolfe, directed by Boyd Kirkland, with music by Carl Johnson and animation by Spectrum. And that synopsis reads as such. A series of bombings reminiscent of a long-lost TV series occur, and the washed-up star of it may be connected.
Not terrible. I think that's, as far as crowdsource is concerned, they stuck to the actual plot itself. We open up the episode this week, and we get it's black and white, and we get a tremendous theme song that we'll talk about in music here in just a little bit. But it's a little bit confusing if you're not quite sure what's going on. But we see a shadowy figure and a voiceover from a great voiceover artist, and they announce that in fact people lurking in the shadows should beware of the gray ghost. So. Can I insert that voiceover announcer is the same one from Freakazoid?
When crime haunts the night, a silent crusader carries the torch of justice. Those with evil hearts, beware, for out of the darkness comes the Grey Ghost. Tonight's episode, The Mad Bomber.
I had that in my notes. I was very excited.
A Bruce Timm connection. Very good. We like that. I think we talked
Tom Ruger connection too.
Didn't we talk we talked to James about Freakazoid? This is the second time this month Freakazoid has been mentioned on this podcast, and it's a pretty rare thing for that to happen.
That's right.
Hey, we're doing Zeta month. You're doing Freakazoid month.
Freakazoid month here at the DCAU review. Man, if you thought nobody listened to Zeta Project podcast, oh boy, wait till we get the numbers for Freakazoid.
I've got a feeling that Freakazoid would do better, actually.
It's probably niche enough where somebody remembers it. I don't know. There's probably a Freakazoid podcast out there right now. Let's be honest, though.
I wouldn't doubt it.
A Freakazoid watch along podcast. So we quickly realize that it is in fact a young Bruce Wayne who is watching a television program in black and white television, getting ready to go to bed, and his father tells him it's almost time for bed. He needs to wrap it up, but he'll let him watch the end of the Grey Ghost first. But we get the Grey Ghost, and we hear a buzzing sound, and then see an explosion, not all that different than the explosion we see at the beginning of Batman the Animated Series intro either. We see an explosion, and we see I guess whoever's in charge of the police captain or whatever, talking just with the Grey Ghost, giving him a ransom note signed from the Mad Bomber, threatening to blow up more buildings across his city if there's not a ransom paid. And then we flash to what's out of the black and white into a color scene. We hear a very similar buzzing and another explosion. And we see Batman arriving at the scene of an exploding building. And Commissioner Gordon hands him the exact same note with the exact same wording.
Pay up or pay the consequences. $1 million in cash or the Piedmont Bank is next. Signed, the Mad Bomber.
Batman.
Pay up or pay the consequences. $1 million in cash or the Gotham Bank is next. Signed, the Mad Bomber.
So we're set up here very early on that there are indeed some parallels to exactly what's going on here between Batman in real life and this old episode of Beware the Grey Ghost.
Yeah, what I love about it is that it's so similar that like the present day Gotham Mad Bomber like completely mimics the handwriting of the note from the 30 years earlier.
Do you think he used the prop?
Oh yeah, maybe it was a prop.
Maybe he had the prop
Simon Trent sold
sold to him, and he's just like, here, I'm going to use this again.
Yeah,
there you go.
Yeah,
that's possible. I mean, you know, I'm sure using the same handwriting does cut down on production costs. They just handed them the original Batman the Animated Series prop sheet and said, use it in the future.
That's right. Make it color. There we go.
Yeah, so we established there that Batman, it seems familiar to Batman, but he's not quite sure how or why. And as we then cut to a flashback, as we see that young Bruce had fallen asleep during this particular episode of The Grey Ghost, and so he didn't quite see exactly how things shook out. But as older Bruce wakes up and sort of from a tossing and turning in his bed, he suddenly remembers that it's connected to this old Grey Ghost cartoon, and we get to see like Bruce, not Batman, Bruce Wayne is kind of on the hunt now to figure out what exactly the connection is to the Grey Ghost, and he's trying to track down a copy of this one episode that he sort of vaguely remembers from his childhood, this is definitely a plot that can only happen in an era where the internet didn't exist, huh? like
right. I mean, it's kind of funny that he's basically doing the Watchtower Database thing of trying to track down lost media,
right?
of superheroes.
You know what would have really helped here? You know what would have helped here for this? An official IMDb synopsis for this episode. If he had an official IMDb synopsis, I would have told you right there that the cars were responsible for this, but no IMDb to go to, right?
That's right. This is the like the Justice League Burger King comics of
oh, even harder to find might be the Flash Silly Putty comic.
Oh my gosh.
There you go. So he does go and search. He finds the only guy in town that has every TV show that you could ever imagine on original film reels. And wouldn't you know it, this is the one show he's not able to track down because the studio Spectra burned down.
Spectrum did do the animation on this one, so I think it was an intentional reference.
I'm sure it was. Yes. Hopefully they weren't threatening to burn down Spectrum based on the episode.
Like if that cow nose droops any lower,
we're gonna burn Spectrum to the ground. So yeah, Spectra is the film studio that burned tragically, losing the entire library of the Grey Ghost. So according to this gentleman, the Grey Ghost no longer exists. And
well, so before we leave the video store, I want to say that is based on a real life location.
Really?
Yeah. So I did a little bit of backstory research to just be like ahead of the game for the podcast. So I listened to Justin Michael from Batman the Animated Podcast did an interview with Tom Ruger about this episode, and there wasn't a lot of like, you know, behind the scenes trivia, but he did say this is based off of Eddie Brandt's Saturday matinee in Los Angeles.
Interesting. That's really cool.
I love that.
Yeah, I love the fact they based it on something, because it is weirdly specific to have like just Batman goes or Bruce goes to a place that has this entire catalog of every television show ever. Like I don't know.
Just not that one.
Right. Just not that one. Correct. But yeah, that's awesome. A great little tidbit there. So we so unable to find that. We do find out that Bruce tries to figure out just who the star of this show is. Can't remember the name of who the actor was. I love that Alfred puts in here that he also doesn't know, but because he doesn't watch television, he prefers his fireplace.
So many actors.
I wish I knew the one you're looking for, Master Bruce, but I don't watch television. I prefer my fireplace.
I found him.
Simon Trent. Dapper-looking chap,
and he's living right here in Gotham.
Yeah, so they have to end up turning to that book, The Player's Directory, which Andrea Romano says is a real thing that exists and is how she did a lot of her casting. So she's stuck in like a kind of insider business insider gag there.
Love that. Tremendous. And wouldn't you know it, he's able to track down Simon Trent, who was the actor that in fact played the Grey Ghost, thanks to this this encyclopedia of actors. And so he, wouldn't you know it, he also just happens to be living in Gotham City. What a coincidence.
Yeah,
in the Chelsea Arms Hotel, if I'm remembering correctly, what it was called. And I've been trying to figure out, because I know I've seen that background in other episodes. I've been trying to figure out who else lives in there. Oh shoot, I just found it. It comes back up in Joker's Millions, and Joker's living in there.
Joker and the Grey Ghost are neighbors. That's
tremendous.
I mean, I would hope by the time we get to Joker's Million that Grey Ghost has, you know, recouped enough from those VHS / maybe Blu-ray sales
to get
out of there. Yeah,
hopefully so. Hopefully they're paying him nice royalties on that show re-release.
Hope so. Yes. But yeah, we see a pretty tragic, like, again, we talk about this a lot with especially this early show when this show was still kind of finding its footing, to go to like a kid's cartoon. It's a Batman cartoon. And we're going to do this scene about this sad old man who used to be a famous actor and now can't get a job. And his landlord's pounding on his door, telling him that he's late on his rent and that he's going to throw him out on the street if he doesn't pay up. And he calls his agent, and his agent tells him he can't find him a part. And he's so angry. He's looking at this like shrine to his once famous healthy career, and he starts throwing things and breaks down weeping. And I'm like, this was on at like 3 p.m. in the afternoon on a Wednesday on Fox Kids in 1992 somehow. Like it's real. I mean, it's very dramatic, and it really sets up who this Simon Trent character is when we find him, and it makes it that much more exciting when he does take the more heroic turn. But in the moment, I'm just like, I can't believe this was on a children's cartoon. Like, one of those moments that really strikes you, I feel like.
Oh, definitely. And like, you know, that's one of the great things about Batman the Animated Series, and really all of the Tim produced stuff, is that the creative forces behind it always had a, let's make a show that kids will enjoy, but let's not talk down to them, kind of thing. And it's made it last the test of time, honestly. Absolutely. Like, I can't imagine a different version of Batman Animated Series where it was just constantly, you know, the like, don't play with guns, right, kind of thing.
Yes,
like,
cartoon.
None of us would be going back to that 30 years later.
Right. Correct. Yep. Right. Exactly. Other than like the irony kind of enjoyment of some of those like G.I. Joe or some of those 80s cartoons, you don't really see people really, not a lot of people, not in the numbers that people that are still able to go back and kind of derive new enjoyment like all of us can with this series. But yeah, so we establish here that Simon's going to take all of his remaining Grey Ghost merch and sell it to this seemingly innocent toy shop owner in his vintage toy store. And
he looks a little familiar. We'll talk about that in visuals. But this guy looks strangely familiar. Sounds familiar too.
That's right.
He kind of sounds like the J-Man from Batman Beyond.
That's right.
I can see it.
I can hear it. Maybe.
Could the J-Man be like this guy's grandson? Is that impossible? You're the timeline expert, Mattie. Is it impossible that the J-Man?
There's no evidence to suggest, but also no evidence to suggest not.
Also related to Booster Gold from Batman and Harley Quinn, and Two-Face from Justice League versus the Fatal Five.
There's some shallow gene pool.
Great. But yes, he sells off his remaining merch and returns to his apartment sort of dejected. He's told he's not going to get much money for the Grey Ghost merch just because it's not very popular. And the toy store owner gestures over to this large collection of merchandise that's on sale. So he's having trouble moving product. So he doesn't give him much, but he gives him enough to pay one last month's rent. And as Simon Trent returns to his apartment, apartment. He sort of longingly looks at the last bit of merchandise he has and says, "Well, old friend, you paid for the rent for the last time," and then takes a nap in a chair. But so Simon goes to take a nap and he wakes up and mysteriously all of his merchandise is back in the apartment with him, much to his surprise. There's also
some of it, not all of it. There's some cars missing.
Yeah, true. Good.
At the very least.
At the very least, there are some cars missing. But we get and he returns the Grey Ghost costume, which has a note attached to it asking him to meet a friend at the Gotham Library that night, I believe, or someplace, one of the buildings downtown. So Simon, dressed in a trench coat, arrives at the meetup spot, and he's startled to see Batman there waiting for him. And Batman wants to shake him down and get some information. And Simon he's just not having it. He's like the guy at any Comic-Con who's like, listen, I'm not that role that I played. I'm a human being. Can you please just stop asking me questions as if I'm actually the hero I played on TV? I'm not actually the Grey Ghost.
What do you want from me? Some madman is blowing up Gotham piece by piece. Somehow it's connected to the Grey Ghost. To you.
What are you talking about? I'm just an actor. The Grey Ghost was a part I played.
The bombings in Gotham are exactly like an episode of The Grey Ghost. I need you to remember how it was done.
I made hundreds of those shows. They're all a blur. Now leave me alone. Just leave me alone. That noise.
Batman just wants to pick his brain about a potential episode.
Yeah, I can see that now.
Yeah, Batman's a little like mean to him for no reason. Like,
excuse me, 60-year-old actor, can you help me stop a murderer?
So like, I like to think that it comes into the theme of like stunted adolescence that's at play here. Is like, you know, Batman is both Batman and Bruce Wayne, so why wouldn't the Grey Ghost be both the Grey Ghost and Simon Trent? And he's thinking about it in those terms and like not as a TV show. This is my hero. This is my hero. This is my hero. And then, right, you know, if he wasn't stunted as an 8-year-old still, he might have been like, it makes all the sense in the world that this isn't actually the guy that was doing the thing.
Right. Precisely. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, there's a reason. I think even as an adult, people that I've looked up to or people that I've idolized, if I meet them and they're not very nice or they're not very like warm, there is that disappointment, even if you're not associating them directly with the, like, I'm not like, hey, I met a professional athlete. It's like, okay, they're an athlete, but they're also a human being. But if they're kind of mean to me for no reason, or they're just kind of like standoffish, I'm like, maybe I can't root for this person anymore. If they're kind of
right,
or that's kind of a letdown. So it's some of that like expectation that you have that the person is, even if you're not like mentally like the person is the role that they're playing, they're like the role that they're playing. And then when they're not funny or they're not kind or they're not nice,
they're not a hero.
They're not a hero anymore, right?
And that's why my wife hates David Spade to this day.
Wow. Ooh. That's a story to tell.
He was mean to her mom, apparently.
Oh
man,
come on, David.
We're getting off.
We're calling you out here, Spade.
We're getting off track. That's a separate podcast. Call out David.
No,
Spade.
Let's start talking about Joe Dirt.
Save it for the Joe Dirt special edition podcast. So as we continue here, yes, as they're talking, they happen to hear that familiar buzzing, and Batman notices that. Well, actually, he says it out loud. In my mind, I thought Batman just noticed that Simon Trent recognized the sound, but Simon Trent literally goes, "That sound, I recognize that." It's like, okay, he recognizes the sound. We got that. But takes off running before Batman is able to kind of find out exactly what it is, chases him back to his apartment. This poor old man locks himself in the apartment, gets startled half to death, Batman is begging for his help, and wouldn't you know it, he happens to have some original copies of the show still on reel and provides Batman with the Mad Bomber episode. So Batman is able to then do some detective work while reliving his childhood once again.
Yeah, that's kind of the secondary theme of the episode, right? Is that it's a really fun Bruce episode. As much as Batman is as obviously the titular character, this is a really Bruce focused episode, and they kind of do some things we'll talk about in visuals where they show young Bruce and then kind of pan the camera around, do like a little 360, and then all of a sudden we're watching adult Bruce with just like a little smile on his face as he's sort of seeping back into who he was as a child too, and sort of whether he realized it at the time. I guess as we find out later, it was not an accident how much the Grey Ghost inspired the Batman shtick, from the gadgets to the gear to the lair. So him sort of seeping back into that for the first time since he was a kid is kind of a nice moment.
He discovers, in fact, it was in fact these remote control cars that are responsible for it, and he informs the commissioner that the next ransom to be on the lookout for these exploding cars. We get the return of the affable Gotham SWAT team, the strike force, always doing something idiotic. I pointed out in our original review, but I love that even though Commissioner Gordon told them to fire, they waited until it was like a foot away from Gordon's face to shoot it and blow it up, nearly killing Jim Gordon. Just like more inept police officers you cannot find than this group of guys. Like what a terrible group of, no wonder Gotham is in shambles the way it is. You have these guys out there just doing whatever they want to, always blowing stuff up with no worry about anybody else's safety. It just
controversial take. Is it any different than real world police?
I was gonna say there's probably a parallel in that it's like their whole plan is like, okay, we know there are these bombs, we're gonna shoot them. That's our plan. We have no other idea of how to contain this. We're just shoot them before they blow up in the building. So
no bombs.
Yes, there's no other plan. And of course, Batman's plan is not much better as he, as a second remote control car begins to drive up towards the building, he pops out of the front door with the Bat flamethrower.
Yep. And
unleashes it. So yeah, they don't explode the building. They just explode everything within like a 3-block radius around the building.
Which, credible restraint there, knowing that all you got to do to blow up a building is jump through a window and knock a thing over.
The building materials of in Gotham City are just like incredibly flammable. Like
it's all built with asbestos.
That's right. It's asbestos. There's turpentine in the plaster or something.
maybe some lead paint.
That's right. Yeah, just every ill-advised building code violation you can think of. Probably.
I mean, to keep that Gothic 40s style, I'm sure building regulations just were never even thought of in Gotham.
Of course not at all. But so in the midst of this, one car gets away. Batman is able to find out it's a dummy car. It doesn't have an explosive in it. He picks it up, sees the Grey Ghost label on the bottom of it, and immediately realizes he has a piece of evidence here he can examine, but it's a trap. Wouldn't you know? There are more cars behind him attempting to blow him up, cornered in this end of this alley. He climbs up a rope that's been offered to him, and when he gets to the top of the rope safely, wouldn't you know it, in full costume, full gear, it is in fact the Grey Ghost himself. So Grey Ghost lends a hand, helps Batman out. Batman invites him back to the Batcave to do some investigating, some male bonding time, some real bonding time here between these two bros, as he shows the Grey Ghost the Batcave, and the Grey Ghost is very much blown away about how eerily similar it is to the Grey Ghost lair.
This place is amazing. It's just like the Grey Ghost's lair. It's almost an exact replica. Let me show you something else. As a kid, I used to watch you with my father. The Grey Ghost was my hero. So it wasn't all for nothing.
Batman then shows him his shrine to the Grey Ghost. This is my shrine of Grey Ghost merch that I keep down here, and of course delivers the famous line that he used to watch him with his father, and that he was the Grey Ghost was his hero as a child. Just in time for the Bat computer to finish scanning the car for fingerprints, and wouldn't you know, one of the fingerprints shows up to be Simon Trent. And Batman is immediately suspect that Simon Trent himself may be the Mad Bomber. Fits the criteria. Needs money. Trying to hold up for money in order to get a better life for himself. But the Grey Ghost quickly lets Batman know that he sold his cars months ago. And that's where we realize that in fact it is the toy collector. Does he have an official DCAU name?
Ted Dimer.
Really?
Ted Dimer.
Ted Dimer.
Yeah. But no, something I feel like that this part is like the one thing in the episode that feels like a plot hole, because Bruce already knows he's been selling stuff off, right? Did he buy it? Didn't he buy it back and like give some of it back to him? And so it raises the question, did he go in there as Bruce? Because if he did, then at the end when Ted Dimer's fighting Grey Ghost and Batman and Grey Ghost has his costume back, like that kind of gives away Bruce might have been involved there.
Yeah.
Did he go in as Batman? That's got to be fucking weird.
Yeah.
Did he go in as Batman at night and steal it back? Or did he just have like, he's got a Grey Ghost costume in his shrine. Did he have a second one lying around and he didn't actually buy it back and brought it to like, what happened there is what I need to know. I need an extended Snyder cut to figure out 4-hour Beware the Grey Ghost.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that, because in our original review, one of the things that we brought up that would have been interesting was for the plot itself. If you investigated this plot thread, it would needed to have been a two-parter in order to fully flesh out some of this. But if you had where Batman had to take in the Grey Ghost at this point and arrest him, and there was more investigative work that Bruce did, or Bruce had to call back to the fact that, oh yeah, I went to the store where all this stuff was, he's claiming his innocence, there's more investigation there. But because that beat happens so quickly, where it's like, you're the Mad Bomber, and he's like, no, I'm not, I sold my stuff. You don't really even have time to react. It's like, oh my gosh, Batman's hero might be the villain in this episode. It was like they briefly touched on it, but it feels completely unnecessary, because you deal with it for like a second and then it's over. Like,
yeah. I mean, like it's plot hole-ish, but like if you build it out, then either you drag the episode.
Yep.
Or you know, not either you drag the episode. If you build it out, you drag the episode.
Yep.
And so, you know, I'm not going to complain that it's not there, but it does raise a question.
It's just a weird twist that doesn't really feel like it has a payoff, because it's paid off immediately. Like the payoff isn't worth it because it's immediate. Like, you're going to throw in that twist. It should have either been earlier in the episode, like he finds one of the cars and it has Simon Trent's fingerprint on it, and then he tracks Simon Trent down and figures out that he's not responsible, or it just has the guy's fingerprints, or has nobody's fingerprints on it, or whatever. I don't know. But it just feels like a twist for no reason that isn't
right.
Yeah. So we find out, of course, as we head back to the toy store, he's really not all that happy. He's destroying a very valuable Batman action figure, and Batman is right there waiting for him, ready to approach. That's kind of where we get the end of the episode here. We get a final showdown.
That's right, as we get our dramatic our villain's manifesto, if you will.
Time to put your toys away, little man.
I can't. You see, I need the money to buy more toys. I love toys. They can play songs. They can dance. They can even eat money. Oh boy, can they eat money. All my money. And then I remembered an episode of The Grey Ghost. And I knew what else a toy can do. It can carry a bomb. It can hold a city for ransom. Oh, the power of the toy. It can earn millions. Millions for the little old toy collector. Me.
not that dissimilar than Scarecrow doing stuff with fear gas so that he could get money to buy more chemicals to make more fear gas. We have the Mad Bomber, the prototype toy man here, basically saying that toys cost a lot of money, and all of his money, in fact, even though he's running a store, he always wants more, and he just can't seem to get everything that he wants because of how much everything costs. So
don't we all know the feel?
Right. I was going to say, as someone who was trying to, on the secondary market, collect a bunch of Batman the Animated Series DC Direct toys right now, I feel you, man.
As somebody who wants to get back into the retro video game collecting hobby, after cashing out a couple years ago before selling. Ugh. But no, I do think, now that we're talking about the motivation for him, though, I do think that there is an interesting thing that comes up with it, in that you always hear that the best Batman villains are mirror images of him. Mm-hmm. And sure, the Mad Bomber hasn't like come up in popularity at all, and I don't think he ever will. But like I was saying, with the stunted adolescence theme of the episode, they mirror that in the villain. And that's a lot of just really interesting. It shows how, like, having that going on for you, it could either put you in a place where you're, you know, spoiled rotten and everything has to revolve around you, or it can put you in a place where you still have that childlike optimism about you, and it does, you know, good to the people around you. And I like to think we all have the Batman side of it.
Right. Fingers crossed.
And all of the YouTube commenters have the Mad Bombers.
Tremendous.
No, I think that's a great point, though, is that, there's that. It is very much, he does have that sort of the vibe of everything was better 15 years ago, and gosh darn it, I'll do whatever it takes, and I'll commit whatever terrible acts to make myself feel like, to try to chase that feeling that I had when I was a kid. And
so I think the big separation between the two, and I think it's as much in real life as it is in the episode itself, is that you can tell with Bruce's like stunted adolescence that he has care for what went on behind the scenes, the people who actually worked on it, and he wants to, you know, he didn't necessarily at the start think, oh, you know, the person behind it isn't the same as the character, but you see him going through that throughout the episode. Whereas where Ted Dimer, or the Mad Bomber, whatever you want to refer to him as, is coming from, he seems to be a lot more interested in the concept of the gray ghost itself than the people behind the product, because, you know, Simon's coming in every couple weeks and the guy's just like, yeah, no, sorry, can't help you. I want you, but can't help you.
And also the way that, like, as you said, like, Bruce kind of learns a lesson throughout the episode, where when he first, he gives Simon Trent the suit and says, like, be the hero, help me. And then eventually he does, but on his own terms. And he realizes that, oh, it's, even though this person isn't literally the character, so much of what he did in this character inspired me, and then now I pass that on by trying to save people and do the right thing, and he kind of takes the right lessons and learns a lesson even in this of himself, of seeing the difference between, you know, who the character was and who the real person was. So I think that's that sort of leads us to our grand finale, as Batman again gets this sort of manifesto from the Mad Bomber about how he's going to keep holding the city for ransom, and he seemingly has Batman dead to rights with all of these remote control bomb cars driving around at his feet. But then, as Mattie has already alluded to, in comes the Gray Ghost, smashing through a window, knocking into the Mad Bomber, into a bookcase, which falls forward, and immediately
blows it all up.
It barely touches the computer screen, and everything just bursts into flames, and Batman and the Gray Ghost and the Mad Bomber get clear, but the whole building, and including all of Ted Dimer's toys, go up in smoke here. And as we kind of deal with the aftermath of this boy who never grew up, we see that this resulting case and also the rediscovery of these original Gray Ghost film reels has led to a resurgence for Simon Trent. We see I wonder if they had to pay to use that People, like there's a People magazine cover with Simon Trent in the Gray Ghost outfit, and also someone named Matt Hagen.
You know what's weird? So when I was rewatching it last night, I was watching, I believe it's the Blu-ray rip. It's the version that's on HBO Max.
Yeah.
And they changed that People magazine. The DVD and the Blu-ray both look different. And I'm sure it's a retake that happened while the show was running. But it's like, the most notable thing is that like where the date on that People magazine is, like it looks a lot better in one version than the other. But in the version I was watching last night, I don't think it had Matt Hagen's name on the cover either.
Yeah, I didn't see it. It looked like gibberish. I thought it looked like it wasn't clear from what I saw today. Although I didn't rewind it, I just saw it in a brief pass. But yeah, it's very, very interesting that the various, you could do a whole video on just the various special edition versions of Batman the Animated Series since the original run versus what we see now on digital streaming platforms.
Oh, absolutely. And we definitely want to do that at some point. I want to say that, like, as we've been talking to people over the years, I want to say, I think the DVD version is like what they wanted out, and the Blu-ray version goes back and takes a lot of first takes that they were just like, crap, we got to get a retake when this, goes into rerun.
Interesting.
And so the rerun versions are the DVD, and the original versions are the Blu-ray, from what I understand. I'm sure that it's probably not like a 100%
sure
accuracy thing.
But so we have our final scene, though, as mentioned, Simon Trent signing autographs in full Gray Ghost garb, and Bruce Wayne himself gets his new box set of the series autographed, and we get, maybe this is, I think, up there with maybe the most iconic endings to any of these episodes.
Please make it out to Bruce.
There you go, Bruce.
Thanks, Mr. Trent. You know, as a kid, I used to watch it with my father. The Gray Ghost was my hero.
Really?
And he still is.
Which is that he basically tells him he's Batman without actually
right.
He repeats the aforementioned thing that Cal mentioned, where he says that I used to watch you with my father, and the
as a child, I used to watch the Gray Ghost all the time with my father.
That's right. I just imagine the guy who's actually now in line getting his stuff signed is like, dude, you had your chance, you walked away.
Right.
This is my time to talk to him now. But yes, so we get that kind of nice ending there. As that, again, that's sort of the, as you said, the lesson of the episode is what you can take from these sort of childhood heroes that you have, and the good and the bad that comes from that. And we see the ultimate good in this case of Bruce being able to publicly, help bring this hero of his back into prominence, and also let him know, how much he means to who he inevitably became.
Absolutely. So, Liam, my original score for this, for plot, as we'll get into and get Mattie's score here in just a moment, but my original score for this was a 6 out of 10. I think it's a memorable episode. It's an iconic episode for a lot of reasons, but when you really break down the plot and you look at it, it's a little bit silly. I do like the fact, Mattie, your perspective on this and the whole parallels between the two characters, not something I'd ever thought of before. So that's given me like a new perspective on the episode. So
you're allowed to change your score if you want. I won't stop you.
There you go. I think I also like the fact that the writers took this time to give nods and homages to, clearly this is who they ended up casting as Simon Trent. This is hey, we're thanking what came before us. The Batman that came before us was impactful to a lot of the people that worked on this show. That was their Batman growing up. So the fact that Bruce says this line that they used to watch him with his father probably was speaking for a lot of the people that worked on this show when it came to Batman and to Adam West's portrayal as Batman. So there's that nostalgic feeling. I do love the episode. But the toy guy being the villain like doesn't really ever feel like much of a threat. The reveal comes late enough where there's not a ton of action at the end. The culmination of the episode doesn't feel very action filled. I do like the excitement of trying to figure out where the bombs are coming from. The car chase is pretty exciting. The explosions happening and all of that are pretty exciting. I think if I had to, I would probably leave it at a 6, maybe with Mattie's perspective on the adolescent stunted adolescent view. I might give it a 7 out of 10, maybe bump it up a point, but I probably wouldn't differ that much. Liam, yours was a 5 out of 10. Where would you land?
I'd come up a few points now. I think I don't know where I would. Yeah, maybe a 7 or an 8 now. I think especially with Mattie's sort of enhancing our own perspectives. But I think it is because it's a celebration. And I think sometimes just the concept is so much fun, and it's and I think there's also, maybe now that we're a few years into this, it's still fun to me to be like, we're in an extent, like we've talked about, are reliving our own childhoods by reviewing this show and looking back on it. And then there's an episode about Batman reliving his childhood and going back and watching an old show that meant everything to him when he was a kid. And it's like there's a fun like Inception level to this that maybe I didn't appreciate entirely the first time that we reviewed it. But let's get to Mattie.
Do you think Bruce started a Gray Ghost podcast after he retired from Batman in 2019?
I love that. So
absolutely, that's my canon. Sure, for sure.
But no, I feel like I've got to give this one a 9. Like I've already been saying, it's just got so much stuff in it that rings true to life. And I know you're absolutely correct in like that the threat isn't gargantuan by any means, but at the same time, I haven't ever been the type of person who feels like you have to have a dire threat for the plot to be good, right? I mean, like you don't judge slice of life stuff with that metric. And I think that the fact that the threat is something as goofy as the Mad Bomber, toy collector, essentially, really does take you back to like that old kind of pulpy, like 40s and 50s hero, which is what they were going for here. And it's already heightened so much just by the love of pulp that went into this series as a whole. And so like, deciding to not hit the brakes on that and going full into it while also delivering such a heartwarming, nostalgic, and like I said, true to life episode. Like I can't give it anything other than a 9. And the only reason it's not a 10 is just because of that one little plot hole.
Yeah, there you go. Well, strong score. Love it. Let's get into animation and visuals, Lam.
That's right. So as mentioned, we have Boyd Kirkland as our director, and we have Spectrum providing the animation services. Although to me, this isn't like the classic Spectrum look, because I always think of the Spectrum Batman as being the one with like the real droopy nose and the more like the longer swooped back ears. And it's not quite that. I don't know if this was one of those episodes where there's some of it was maybe farmed out to like a subsidiary studio or something. I know when we had Kevin Altieri on the show, he mentioned that would sometimes happen, and sometimes when you see the name of one studio, it's sometimes some sort of smaller studio that they also owned is doing some of the work here. So I'm not sure if that's the case, or if it's just a different storyboard team than we were used to, or just because it's, still relatively early in the production order, but it doesn't quite have that normal sweeping Spectrum look. But there are still some some pretty fun visuals from all the bright oranges, kind of the shot at the beginning of Batman standing on the building and the explosion goes off and everything's sort of caked in orange, and all these all the explosions I think are really great and atmospheric, and cutting between Batman seeing the explosion and the gray ghost seeing the explosion. So you have the black and white and how they sort of mirror each other, and the chief handing the gray ghost the note, followed by Commissioner Gordon handing Batman the note, and all that stuff. That some of the little mirroring of that scene I think is pretty fun visually.
Yeah, I think so. I'm going to start with the headline here. So my original score that I gave this episode was so shockingly low that I had to go back and hear why I gave it so shockingly low. I gave it a 2 out of 10. And I think I was real upset over the quality, I feel like, of the model. Like everybody's a little bit off model in certain parts of this episode
oh yeah, for sure. I was going to say that. Towards
the end of the episode, there's also a couple of moments where Batman talks and he keeps like freezing and it looks like he forgot to put his dentures in. That was like my main gripe listening back to my original review. I definitely would change this, because I think there are some great cinematic sort of sequences they do, especially the first shot that's like they zoom into the gray ghost's eye and then they zoom back out, and there's this sweeping sort of 360 that they do with Bruce sitting there watching the television, and then there's parallels to that later on in the episode. The shot where gray ghost swings through the window. There's a lot of the Batmobile chase. There's a lot of pretty dynamic sequences that happen. But there are some other times where they're just kind of standing there and everybody looks very off model. And it looks like, thankfully, I think, and this is, Mattie, what we tend to look at when people are off model. If they're off model in 5 different ways in the episode, that kind of sticks in our craw more than being off model and it being consistently off model, if that makes sense. If it's going to be off model, right, it should be look off model the same way throughout the entire episode, which I think it does. It's just as if you were watching a different artist, reading a different comic book with a different artist, Jim Lee versus Greg Capullo or something like that, where it's just a different art style. So if you can get past that point, and it may not be your favorite art style, but if you can get past that point, as long as it looks the same throughout the episode, you can kind of swallow that a little bit easier. What did you think as far as animation and visuals? What stood out to you, Mattie, and what was your score?
Yeah, I mean, you guys both already mentioned some of the great parts, but like I was saying, steering into the pulp direction that they were already building up for this really makes this episode feel and look just incredible. I loved all of like the transition between black and white and full color, not just to show the past, but like to show opening up with that gray ghost just like in black and white adventure was incredible. All the fire stuff is fantastic. Gray ghost, swooping in at the end and being all in silhouette. It was a really, really cool thing. In the gray ghost, whatever you want to call it, the shrine, essentially, where Batman is Helga Pataki and the gray ghost is Arnold. You've got those cool little nods of like, you've got a gray ghost poster in there that looks like the Batman the Animated Series poster. I mean, you've got the Ted Dimer that looks like a pretty like on point Bruce Timm. We've already talked about like the environments, like the video store, the toy store, which like I know a lot of the times and stuff like that, they'll paint the backgrounds to have all those toys in there, but they're using toys and stuff as props in here as well. And that takes a lot of effort, because you got to make all of this, the different cells so that you can move the prop and that it won't be on the background anymore, this, that, and the other. Right. But there is, like you said, there are those moments where it's just noticeably off model. There were a couple times watching this that I was just like, oh, Bruce's head is a lot thinner than it should be.
Yep.
and like it doesn't ruin the enjoyment, but it does, break the fourth wall a little bit, where you're just like realizing, wait, hold on, wait, yeah, there are the people behind this, which is like something I love to do, as stated earlier, but at the same time, it does break the fourth wall. It takes you out of the piece of entertainment itself and starts making you think about the background of it all.
Sure.
And that's not everyone's cup of tea. I'd probably say that like it's a 7 or 8. Let's go 7.5. Can we do half scores?
Absolutely.
I'll do. Okay, yeah, I'll do a 7.5 on the animation then. Because like there's so much in it that's brilliant, but it does just like break you every now and then.
Yeah, there's some weird perspective shots that they do. I think when Grey Ghost and Batman are in the Batmobile, there's like a weird shot where you get the underside of Batman's chin. It's like we don't need to see that. There's another one of those shots where Batman, he's leaving. It's when he's sort of dejected and leaving Simon Trent's apartment, where we get the light shining on Batman. And I know that based on that Batman animated book, there was a huge no for the front side of Batman to be lit, and the no matter what direction he was in, he needed to have the sort of cell shading just on the top and on the back, and have the dark black coloring in the front. And they reversed it in this one shot, and it's just glaringly obvious. It's like, it just doesn't look like what you typically see Batman in every other scene. So
right,
one of those things. It's like, I know that they were not happy with the way that shot ended up being animated based on what the show Bible told them to do.
Oh no, absolutely. I mean, if you go back and listen to any Bruce Timm interviews, he always talks about how he has a hard time going back to Batman the Animated Series at all, just because it's so easy for him to nitpick and be like, oh, that wasn't supposed to be looking like that. And I can imagine that almost anything that we pick out is probably something he probably would have picked out as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And then some.
Yeah, for sure. And to your point, Mattie, like, when you can still sit down and enjoy this episode, we all three of us loved this episode, I imagine. It still holds a near and dear. It doesn't take away from the enjoyment until you start looking. You're like, all right, I need to look at this critically as somebody who's observing what's going on. If you can take that critic hat off, or that critic glasses off, whatever prop you want to use, you can sit there and watch it, and you may be able to enjoy it. But when you do sit down and you start kind of picking these things apart, it's a little bit easier to say, hey, yeah, that was off model. That character looked weird in that section. Alfred has a gray mustache and gray eyebrows for the entire episode for some reason. Why? Why does he have a gray mustache? Why does he have a gray mustache and gray eyebrows?
Well,
does this take place in the future?
Well, that to me suggests that he just for men's just his eyebrows and mustache every other week, and this week he hadn't made a run to the drugstore or whatever to pick up his hair dye, his mustache dye.
I'm glad you pointed that out, because I kept thinking there was something weird with the way Alfred looked, and I couldn't put my finger on it. And
he looks like Batman Adventures Volume 2 Alfred with the gray mustache and the gray eyebrows. So
which Batman Adventures Volume 2 brings back the Gray Ghost.
Ooh, maybe it's all connected. It's canon. It's canon.
That's right. I think it's one of those things when we talk about like the way Batman looks. I think as the show went on, they also got better at, we were talking about this a little bit with Ted last week, of like idiot proofing it from like a storyboard. So they probably like, don't do a storyboard shot where we're below looking up at Batman, and it's kind of this weird side angle. Like, I feel like in the later episodes, they wouldn't have attempted that, because they're like, animation the studio can't really pull that off. So let's just do more straight ahead shots, or straight side profile shots, instead of this weird sort of, it's like a little bit low and a little bit diagonal. I'm not a film guy, so I don't know what the camera angle would technically be called, but like
just call it Dutch angles every time.
Right.
Encompasses everything.
Right. As far as I'm concerned, that's something I think about now. I think especially this month, going back to these really, in the first like 20 or so produced, where a lot of these were being before they even hit the air. So
I always forget that this one came so early on, just because like it does, in many aspects, it does look and feel like a later episode. But yeah, you're right. This was only like in production order, this is only about 7 episodes after Alan Burnett came on for Two-Face.
Right. So yeah, I think there's things, I think we see that in the visuals of these earlier episodes. A lot more of things are like, well, we would probably storyboard this differently, which would then help the animation studio maybe pull off a shot a little better than they would in some of these early ones. They were still experimenting.
This may have even been before Dan Reba jumped on.
Wow. Early there. So Liam, your original score was a 7. Mine was a 2, as I stated. I would pull it up a little bit. I'd probably be a little bit more generous, probably give it a 5 or a 6. There are still some things that look a little wonky, as we mentioned, but plenty dynamic animation sequences, I think, that would make up for it in nowadays and reviewing as many episodes as we have. What about you?
Yeah, I think I would probably stick with that 7 or so. Like I said, I think there's for everything we've all talked about there, I think there's just so many nice simple things, and like Mattie said, the background, the design of both Bruce's Grey Ghost shrine, and then in Simon Trent's apartment he has like a different Grey Ghost poster, and you see like a gumball machine and little action figures and a piggy bank or something, like all these little intricate things. In the toy shop, I think you see like a creature from the Black Lagoon and a Lost in Space robot. Yep. So they're like, there's, as always, like probably not something we ever talk about enough on our show, but just the intricate nature of a lot of these background designs was really fantastic in this episode.
There you go. All right, let's move on to our next category, which is going to be music. Carl Johnson, Liam, you said, was responsible for music this week. Man, my original score for this one was a 10 out of 10. I don't think I would change that for all of King Midas's Silver. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, you
gave it a 9, by the way.
Okay, again, sometimes I feel like in those early days, I was just trying to be
contrarian.
Yeah, be a little different. But I mean, yeah, from that opening, as soon as you get past the show open and that title card pops up and the Grey Ghost theme kicks in, it's one of those things that just makes you feel like you're 10 years old or you're 8 years old again, and you're watching this in our parents' basement.
So you're 10 years old watching Bruce, who's 8 years old, watch his hero on television.
That's right.
Back to the inception.
That's right. Yeah. So it's definitely one of those. I think it's one of the more iconic like character themes throughout. All the villains and everybody who had their own unique themes. I think this stands out as maybe one of the most unique pieces of music, at least from this first season.
Yep. Mattie, what about you?
Well, absolutely. I mean, there's not a lot of times where like score music stands out to me, really, because like I felt like
that's why you love the static
like it sticks in your head. It's so catchy. Like it's perfect. Like the music here is incredible. I kind of hope that whoever composed it, that they bring them back for Cape Crusader. That would be incredible.
Yeah.
Like I'm gonna give it a 10. Amazing. Beautiful. Does voice performance count into this? Is it sound as a whole, or is it just music?
It's just music, and then we're going to talk about voice acting in just a second. So
gotcha. Okay. Yeah. I mean, the music's been incredible. What a great theme.
Agreed.
Bring that person back for the Cape Crusader soundtrack. Who was it? Who did the music?
Carl Johnson.
Yeah, it wasn't one of the regular composers that I was super familiar with, but did an absolutely phenomenal job. The way they also bring the theme and they play it, like it sounds almost like a piece of like Disney music when it's like when he's like alone, sad in his apartment, and it's played just like on the strings very somberly and softly, and then they even kind of bring.
You know why it feels like Disney music?
What is he?
It looks as though Carl Johnson has done music for Aladdin and the King of Thieves, Hunchback of Notre Dame 2, Piglet's Big Movie, Pooh's Grand Adventure, and Gargoyles the movie.
There you go. All right.
So like not the high tier Disney stuff, but a lot of the stuff that they were like, we got to get someone that has the style but doesn't cost a lot of money.
Precisely.
That can perform the house style there. But yeah, I think, and the way that sort of softer version of the music comes back at the end when Bruce is talking to Simon at the signing is great too.
Yeah, I even think the pieces in between the car chases when the cars get going at the end, and then the car chase as the remote control cars are chasing the Batmobile, the music for that, which sounds completely different than the sweeping tones of the Grey Ghost theme, are also equally memorable and really punctuate those scenes really well. So yeah. High scores from all of us, I'd say.
Yeah, I think it's, Mattie, you talked about how much like this Grey Ghost character feels like it's based on those pulp like 40s and 50s radio serial characters like the Shadow, or even like I feel like if you listen to this melodically, it can almost be like the Max Fleischer Superman theme. Like if you change, like you go down instead of up with the Grey Ghost version, but it's that like da da da, and it's like da da da, like it's very
right. I could see that.
So it's like take that same idea of like the 1940s and 50s serial, radio serials or animated shorts of that era and the heroes of that time, and kind of bringing that into this at the time modern cartoon. So it's a really, really tremendous piece of music.
Love it. All right, let's move on to our final category, the aforementioned voice acting selection here. Not a huge cast again this week because we don't have a ton of characters, but some notable voices that we've already mentioned in passing here. Liam, let's talk about the voice cast for the week.
Yes, as briefly mentioned by Mattie earlier, we have Joe Lee as the narrator of Beware the Grey Ghost, who was of course the narrator on Freakazoid. Also,
they brought him over there because of this episode.
I'd like to think so.
Well, that's what Tom Ruger was saying.
Oh, that's incredible!
Yeah,
tremendous.
That's
tremendous.
And Batman makes a cameo in the first episode of Freakazoid with that announcer in there. So it's all
there. You go.
It all connects here.
Full circle.
Absolutely. So again, very much perfect for what they're going for. Again, for the the Shadow, who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men type voiceover for the Grey Ghost here. Yep. So great there. Another really, really like prolific one of those names, Jeff Glenn Bennett, we talk about a lot. Voiced the Joker on the Brave and the Bold cartoon, voiced Johnny Bravo, probably most famously.
There you go.
And he was also the Creeper, parentheses, Jack Ryder. Close parentheses.
Close parentheses.
Yeah.
Yes. So lots of his name tends to pop up a lot on our show, but him having a smaller role here as the video store clerk that we see at the
a completely different voice than we're used to for him.
Usually a lot of
it didn't even register to me that that was Jeff.
Yeah, until I saw it in the credits, I wouldn't have been able to pull it out there. But yeah, we do briefly have some of our regulars, Marie Devon as Summer Gleason. Briefly, we have Bob Hastings as Commissioner Gordon. Of course, Ephraim Zimbalist Jr. as Alfred.
He just prefers his fireplace.
Yeah, he just shows up to nag Bruce for liking television.
Just wait until the Grey Ghost jumps into that fireplace. Alfred's gonna be fucked.
He would watch that.
But yes, of course, our main actors who we're going to be sharing most of our time talking about here are going to be, of course, playing the role of Ted Dimer, aka the Mad Bomber, is none other than Bruce W. Timm himself. And obviously the character model, as we chatted about briefly, also based on him. So I don't know, maybe you would be able to shed some light on this, Mattie, if it was always intended for Bruce Timm to play the character, or just as it evolved, they're like, well, if we made him look like Bruce should just play him too. Like, I don't know what point that came into the episode.
Yeah, so that was another part of the Ruger interview, and I think it bled over into the he interviewed Andrea Romano on the same podcast, but essentially what the idea seemed to be was that they wanted Bruce Timm for the role, and they had to coax him into it because this is the early days of BTAS,
right?
Obviously, they've already got all these like small hiccups that they have that are making it to where it's not necessarily the show they wanted it to be. And Bruce Timm's in his head about that kind of stuff, and he says to them, no, we have all of these incredible voice talent. Why would we waste the time with me? and Tom Ruger basically had to butter him up and be like, because it's you. You right. Have like walk into your office, look at all of these toys that you have on all of your shelves. And besides, when are you gonna get the chance to act like across from Adam West again? Like
Right.
you grew up on Adam West. Like this is you. And Andrea Romano was saying that, like, you know, loves the performance to death, but she feels like if she was able to get him in there and redo it all again, it'd be even better today.
I'm sure. Yeah, now that he's had so many other roles under his belt, you know, he's got a lot more experience. The J-Man stuff really opened up, you know, his eyes to what it means to be a voice actor.
That's right.
Release the Romano cut.
That's right. Tremendous. And of course, so rounding out the cast, you have Adam West, who you know, we know from very, very small roles, including the cowboy in the Three Stooges movie, I believe.
Yes.
I think wasn't he the mayor on Family Guy?
Yes,
That's
I
right.
think you're right. Yes, I believe he
And
did.
like I don't know, like some small character called Catman on Fairly Odd Parents.
That's right.
There you go.
Showed up every now and then.
Tremendous. Yes. But I mean, in all seriousness, we talked about it when we originally recorded this episode, you know, playing essentially himself, an actor who was typecast, didn't get many roles after his initial role, as a memorable role as Batman, you know, being able to sort of pour that emotion and likely what may have been his own struggle, probably, hopefully not like living in the slums and stuff like that. But I imagine there was a time where he was struggling to find work and could identify with that. But
it was very like hits home kind of thing. In part of that Andrea Romano interview, she was talking about how they cast Adam, and like she got in touch with the agent and was just like, look, you got to have him call me. I want to explain this to him like beat for beat. I don't want him to think we're satirizing him. I don't want him to be blindsided. Get him to call me so that I can talk this through with him. And almost immediately on that call, he was just like, yep, all good. Let's do it.
There you go. Well, I mean, thank God, because I think it's one of the more notable, memorable voice castings for the entire series. And he only played him in this one episode. It's, you know, I feel like it ranks up there with when you talk about the voices of this show. Most people can remember the time that Adam West guest starred because of this episode. So it's definitely a memorable role for him. And certainly there are parts of it, as you mentioned, where he has to be very emotional and downtrodden over the fact that he's poor, destitute, and not likely to be able to pay his rent the next month. Some of the interactions that he has with Batman.
You know something. You recognize that sound.
This is harassment. I'm calling the police.
We know the next bomb is going to hit the Gotham Library. Help me.
Here's your answer. Take it and go. Please.
I used to admire what the Gray Ghost stood for.
I'm not the Gray Ghost.
I can see that now.
In the cave, and then ultimately culminating with the end scene there, the heartwarming end scene where Bruce essentially reveals to him that he's Batman. It's done really well, and him and Kevin Conroy play off each other so well. It just such great chemistry for two of the more memorable Batmen of the last 100. Well, Batman has been around 100 years, but for the last on-screen performances, at least for Batman. So really,
out of the last 83 years, I'd say they're two of the most memorable.
They are two of the performances that have happened in the last 83 years. I think they are definitely two of them.
Yeah, I feel like this passing of the torch thing is maybe more common now. Like when the guy who played the Flash in the 90s CBS series came back and played Barry Allen's dad on the new CW series. It's like, I feel like those sort of homages and, thanking the people that came before you is maybe a bit more commonplace now for these big franchise things, like Lou Ferrigno showing up as a cameo in the Hulk movies or things like that. But at the time, I don't know that this was quite so commonplace. So to not only to get him in, but to have him then play, perhaps a more overly dramatized version, but a version of his real life story of playing a superhero. And then afterwards, and being on top of the world for a few years. And then once it all goes away, he's got kind of just the memories of who he used to be and not a lot to show for it there, and how empty he sort of feels. And then this chance to sort of re-embody that heroic role, both in the fictional show, and for Adam West getting to come back and play a hero coming out of retirement to save the day one last time. It's incredible. Like,
yeah, and I think part of what makes it so much better is that, like, even though it is kind of based on Adam West's life post Batman, it gave him the ability to show a range that maybe not a lot of people were used to out of Adam West, because he did mostly campy comedy stuff with Batman, and now he's coming back and being like, I'm a drama star. And just like Bruce bringing back the Gray Ghost, this show kind of brought back Adam West, because it was able to be like, look, he's more than just this. He's a guy that's got talent.
So the original score I gave this was a 10 out of 10. I think that I'd stick with that in a heartbeat, just because of the performances we already talked about. Liam, yours was an 8 out of 10.
I didn't if I memory serves, I was not a fan of Bruce Timm's Mad Bomber performance.
I think that's proper.
Again, like, there's a nostalgic factor for me. I still think he's so over the top in that last scene, which is really his only true, like, villainous scene, other than the one scene earlier where he tells Simon Trent that he can't sell any more Gray Ghost merch or whatever. But he's just so over the top and silly. But again, maybe that also goes into the homage, because again, if you ever watched the Adam West show, that was kind of the whole point, was that every villain, as silly and cartoonish as Batman and Robin were in that show, the villains were even more, robust and over the top and verbose and screaming and ranting and raving their villainous plans and everything. So I think maybe I would bump that up to a 9 or a 10 maybe now, but I think it does feel very like he's doing an impression of a Saturday morning cartoon villain to me when he's in those last couple scenes there.
Mattie, what about you? What was your score?
I mean, I'll give it a 9 as well. And resting also on that Bruce Timm performance. I mean, I do think that, like, if you don't know that it's Bruce Timm, it's not bad enough to take you out of it. But if you know that it's Bruce Timm, then all of a sudden you're just thinking, damn, that's Bruce Timm. And who am I to argue with Andrea Romano that it could be better?
Right. Yes, valid point there. All right. Well, we now have to do what we like to call math here, Mattie. So you have to add up your scores. If you can't, then I can add them up for you. But I trust.
Did you write mine down?
I did. Yes, I did. It looks like totaling up Mattie's, we have a
36.5 or something.
36 and a half. Yeah. So 28 and 29 were our original scores. So Mattie, I think brings that score up. Ours would probably be a little bit higher if we were scoring today. And then the last thing we grade things on here, Mattie, is rewatchability, which is, if you're sitting down and you're watching this, does it fall under one of these categories? It's essential to the entire DCAU. It's essential to the show that it's on, the TAS run, or is it just something maybe that you would not skip on a rewatch if you're watching Batman the Animated Series? And I'd say this is 2 thumbs up for rewatchability because of everything that we talked about today as far as what's connected kind of behind the scenes.
Yeah, I mean, it hits all 3 of those. Right. I mean, it's important to the DCAU because it comes back around in epilogue.
Yep.
And that if that's not really where you're heading to,
and the Batman Beyond
DCAU
stuff,
rewatch, like,
but Batman Beyond, he pops up,
so you know, there's that. It's important to this specific show because it gives, you know, backstory on Bruce as a child, and it gives you before the murder, kind of, and it's really the only episode to do that, I think. So you know, you got to have it in there for that. And you know, just in particular, this episode's a 36.5 out of 40, so
yeah, it's pretty strong.
Yeah, you know, I think that, like, out of Batman the Animated Series as a whole, this is like one of the most revered episodes. I'm sure it's in the top 5. It might even be in the top 3. I feel like the top 3 are like this, Almost Got 'Em, and I'm blanking on the other, Heart of Ice. And I'm sure, you know, if you extend it to 4, you got Leather Wings, but like I don't know what the 5th one would be, but this is definitely like in the top 4 at the very least.
For sure. Yeah. Well, there you go. I'd say 2 thumbs up.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is a pretty easy rewatch, and going back to it to rewatch it for the show, and it's one I'll go back, and once you start doing this, and I'm sure Mattie you can sympathize with this, like once this is like a thing you do, it's not a job, but something that you do for a profession, it can be hard to also then go back to visit this material just for fun sometimes, because you're like, well, I spent so much of my life dealing with it. Like,
is that the truth? There's a reason the Superman the Animated Series timeline doesn't exist yet.
Right. Like, it's just like, I've spent so much time dealing with this stuff for the show. Do I really want to also spend my whatever free time I have between work and whatever going back to this? But this is one where you're like, you know, if I needed to kill like 20, if I had like a half hour to kill and I just need to put something on while I, you know, to have some background noise, like this is on the short list of ones I, you know, you throw on, I think, for that.
100. There's a reason that despite the fact there's not another Gray Ghost episode, there's like a Gray Ghost issue of every single Batman the Animated Series tie-in book. Yep. You know, Batman Adventures got one, Gotham Adventures got one, Batman Adventures Volume 2 got one, Batman TMNT Ventures got one. I don't remember if BTAC got one yet, but it sure has got a beautiful cover by Jordan Gibson. Like, this episode, like, has lasted the test of time and touched a lot of people to the point where, like, they keep throwing him in. He's even making his way into the not DCAU stuff now. I heard he was in like White Knight, and I think they brought him into like the main continuity at some point recently. Like,
he's popped up in like little, you'll see like a movie poster or something in a comic book for Beware the Gray Ghost.
The Arkham games.
Yep. He's a playable.
He's in Batman, Lego Batman 3, right?
Yes, there's an animated series pack, and he's one of the characters in it. So for whatever reason, even though it's one, you know, on-screen appearance throughout all these shows, but it was that impactful, and that impactful to not only to the in-universe, the fictional characters, but to obviously all of the people who've made content based on these series since then. So yeah, it's incredible, and it was a hoot going back to it this week.
Absolutely. All right. Well, that will begin to wrap things up for this week. Thank you for joining us. Mattie, thank you so much for being our guest this week, our special guest correspondent. We will now allow you plenty of time to plug anything that you have coming up. So we know Zeta Month is on the horizon there, but anything else that you want to plug, feel free to do so.
Thanks for having me. Tomorrow we are releasing the prologue to Zeta Month. The 20 to 25 minute long Watchtower Database story that explains where the Zetas came from, how they're here. It's been hints. We've been like really trying to like hold on and pull back and not tell people specifically that they were coming, but we wanted them to be like, oh, now that they're here, we can go back and look at all. So
we want someone to do like a movie details channel just for your guys's lore.
Oh, we did a full live stream that is available on the Pod Tower to watch that goes through all of our storyline. I got to be honest, I was incredibly tired that whole day. And like, I'm sure James and I talked over some stuff that we could have probably added additional context to. But we did that after releasing Batman and Harley Quinn Will It Canon. Go watch that now. If you want the full thing, I've got Mattie in my basement playlist. You can search it up on YouTube. But I also just recently made a Zeta month catch-up playlist. Nice. It's called The Zetas Are Coming, The Zetas Are Coming. So if you want to put that in your YouTube bar, go right ahead. And hopefully it's been on YouTube long enough that it'll show up in the search results. But yeah, those are the main things to plug.
Well, check that out. Again, if you're listening to this episode and you're one of the very few people that listen to our podcast that also enjoy Zeta, because we know that number exists, go ahead and check that out. If you
have y'all just like looked at the floor of like your least popular Zeta episode and been like, okay, that is the amount.
Yep. We've done that. We're like, all right, well, we don't have to spend 2 minutes. We're gonna triple up on these the next time. We're gonna have 3 Zeta episodes in one episode. That'll get all those people get those fills, and we don't have to have a month straight where people are just like, I'm gonna skip this one. I'm not gonna tune in for that one.
And hey, stick around because the end of Zeta month actually bleeds into December.
All right. Very excited. Excited to see what's in store. You folks do just some incredible work there, and we are quite we enjoy it and are great consumers of your products. So the more that you put out, regardless of our love or care about Zeta, we'll continue to consume it. So thanks for all the work that you guys do, and thanks for coming on the podcast today, Mattie. It was great.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's always fun to blast in on other people's stuff.
Absolutely.
There you go. Can't wait to have you on. We'll have you on again in the future to talk about more fun stuff. Maybe we'll have you on for the next Zeta project review.
Ooh, do it.
Let's do it.
Wow, awesome, Liam. That was such a great time. We completed the unofficial Watchtower Database month, and man, what a great episode to go out on. So much fun, and thanks to Mattie and the rest of the Watchtower Database for coming on and reviewing these last several episodes with us. And don't forget, if you're looking to support our podcast, you can check out DCAU Review both on Twitter and Instagram. You can also, if you want to support us monetarily, you can use the link at the bottom of our anchor.fm. It's anchor.fm/DCAU Review. You can click on that link and donate to us directly, or go over to DCAUreview.com and click on the store tab, get yourself some merchandise and support us that way. Liam, we are going to continue here in this month. No special guest correspondent lined up as of right now for next week, but we will continue with another revisited episode, a re-review, if you will, next week. And we are very excited to do just that as we continue here celebrating the 30th anniversary of Batman the Animated Series.
That's right. And if you're listening to this on the day or the day after it comes out, you want to head to our Twitter at DCAU Review. We're doing a poll for our last episode of this re-review. There is a 5th Saturday, which we'll probably be looking at as per usual. We'll be doing an Elseworlds review for that week, but we have one more regular re-review to look at, and you're going to have some choices here. Really, it's do you like us? Do you want to extend our suffering? Because I'm going to put some of our least favorite episodes from the early days of our show, those being Fear of Victory and The Underdwellers in there, but I'm also going to put Nothing to Fear in there, and maybe one other wild card choice that, as of recording, I'm not sure what it'll be yet. But the power is yours.
Oh boy!
So yeah, we will announce the results of that poll probably in the middle of the coming week, and we'll move forward from there. But yes, definitely head to @DCAU Review on Twitter. And let us know which ones you'd like us to take a more detailed look at from these early days episodes of Batman the Animated Series that we looked at.
There you go. You can also, if you listen to us on Spotify, use the poll option on Spotify. You can also vote there, as we will list those as we drop the episode as well. So let your voice be heard, and please be kind to us. It's all that we ask. Please be kind. If we have to review The Underdwellers for a second time, it will not be very pretty. I'll just say that. But either way, whatever we end up reviewing, it's going to be a great time next week. Cannot wait, Liam.
Absolutely. It's going to be a lot of fun.
But until then, I'm Cal.
And I'm Liam.
And we will talk to you on the next episode of the DCAU Review.
Bye-bye.